Have you ever stopped to think about how judging others can directly reflect on how we ourselves are judged? In this video, we'll dive into the psychology behind judgment, why we do it, how it affects our relationships, and the deep impact it has on our emotional freedom and authenticity. Understand the cycle of social judgment, the fear that holds us back, and most importantly, discover ways to live with less fear, more truth, and genuine connection. If you want to transform the way you see others and yourself, this content is for you. Watch, reflect, and start the change today. First impressions, the silent judgment that decides your fate. Imagine walking into a room full of strangers. You haven't said a word yet, but in that very moment, everyone there has already decided who you are. Scary? Yes, but it's reality. Modern psychology shows that we form an impression of someone in less than a tenth of a second. In 100 milliseconds, your brain has already labeled you. Trustworthy or suspicious, attractive or odd, leader or follower, without you even opening your mouth. This is called automatic processing, and it's part of our survival instinct. According to psychologist Nalini Ambady, who deeply researched the concept of thin slicing, the brain's ability to make judgments based on minimal information, people can accurately assess personality traits in just a few seconds. In a classic experiment, students watched a 10-second video of teachers in the classroom with no sound. Then they judged characteristics like charisma, competence, and confidence. The most impressive part? These quick judgments matched evaluations made by real students after a full semester of classes. In other words, we judge first and only later try to rationalize what we've already felt. The first impression is more than a fleeting moment. It's an unconscious sentence that shapes relationships, job interviews, sales, dating, and social connections. In a hyper-connected world, where we're exposed daily to dozens of faces, voices, and online profiles, this automatic judgment ability has become even sharper and more dangerous. Because things aren't always what they seem. And there's more, first impressions are stubborn. Even when we get to know someone better later, our brain tends to hold onto that initial judgment, twisting new information to fit the original story. Psychologists call this the confirmation bias, a mental trap that prevents us from revising our opinions, even when we're wrong. Think about how many opportunities might be lost because of this. A misunderstood gesture, a tired face, an insecure tone of voice. Small details that together paint a picture that doesn't always reflect reality, but to our brain seems absolutely true. In this content, we'll dive deep into the backstage of the silent judgment. Why we judge so fast, what influences us without us noticing, how people perceive us even before we speak, and most importantly, what we can do to avoid being victims or perpetrators of our own minds. Get ready, because the way you see and are seen may never look the same again. The judgmental brain, mental shortcuts, and unconscious biases. If you think you judge someone based on logic and reason, I'm sorry to say, you're fooling yourself. Most of what we call a conscious decision is actually a reflection of automatic processes. Our brain is an energy-saving machine, and to achieve this, it relies on mental shortcuts known in psychology as heuristics. These heuristics are mechanisms the brain uses to make quick decisions with minimal effort. They help us navigate the chaos of daily stimuli, but they come at a cost. They make us biased. In other words, we start to see the world and people through distorted lenses, often without realizing it. One of the most renowned psychologists in this field is Daniel Kahneman, Nobel Prize winner in economics and author of the bestseller Thinking, Fast and Slow. He explains that our mind operates in two systems. System 1, fast, automatic, emotional, impulsive. System 2, slow, analytical, rational, conscious. When we meet someone, it's System 1 that judges first, and it isn't interested in logic, but rather survival and efficiency. It analyzes visual cues, facial expressions, tone of voice, and body language to decide if that person is a threat, an ally, or irrelevant. Only later, and with great effort, does System 2 kick in, but often just to justify what System 1 has already decided. That's where unconscious biases come into play, mental patterns that distort our judgment without our awareness. Here are some of the most common. Confirmation bias. We seek information that confirms what we already believe, ignoring or rejecting contradictory evidence. Halo effect. A positive trait, like attractiveness or friendliness, influences our overall perception of a person, even without real basis. Negativity bias. Negative stimuli, like a frown, weigh more than positive ones, an evolutionary trait to detect danger. Stereotype bias. We judge based on predefined categories: gender, race, age, clothing, unaware that we're labeling people. These biases are automatic and affect all of us, including well-meaning individuals. Experiments conducted at universities like Harvard, using the implicit association test, show that even trained professionals, judges, doctors, and police officers, make biased decisions, even when they swear to be impartial. The most troubling part? These judgments shape the real world, deciding who gets hired, promoted, ignored, loved, or rejected. A body language gesture or tone of voice can change someone's fate. If we want to understand how we are judged and how we judge others, we must first accept this uncomfortable truth. Our minds are not fair by default. They need to be educated, challenged, and trained not to repeat the same mistakes. In the next section, we'll explore how appearance and body language instantly influence our perceptions, and why the body speaks louder than words. Appearance, body language, and social judgment. The body speaks what the mouth does not. Before a single word is spoken, the body is already talking and being judged. And believe me, it speaks loudly. Whether in a meeting, interview, negotiation, or simple conversation on the subway, our eyes pick up micro-expressions, postures, gestures, and even clothing, and the brain starts putting together an instant puzzle. Is this person trustworthy, dominant, insecure, afraid, competent? The body reveals before speech, and this has profound implications. Studies led by psychologist Amy Cuddy at Harvard University show that body language has a direct impact not only on how others see us, but also on how we feel about ourselves. In her research, individuals who adopted power poses, open shoulders, chest out, chin up, for just 2 minutes before a stressful social situation, like an interview, performed significantly better than those who assumed closed, slouched postures. More than that, hormones associated with confidence and stress also changed. This reveals something essential. Our body influences others' judgment and our own judgment about ourselves. But it's not just posture. Appearance itself, what we wear, how we style our hair, skin tone, body type, also strongly influences how we are perceived. And again, unconsciously. A study published in the Journal of Experimental Social Psychology showed that job candidates dressed in more polished clothing were considered more competent, intelligent, and trustworthy, even when evaluators did not have access to their resumes. The opposite was also observed. Sloppy or casual clothes caused an automatic drop in perceptions of authority and seriousness, even without any speech involved. These automatic responses come from the ancestral mind, which associated certain visual signals with safety or danger, leadership or submission. An upright body, steady gaze, and precise movements communicated readiness and strength. A slouched body, downcast eyes, and hesitant gestures suggested vulnerability, which could mean risk to the group. These codes are still active today and govern much of the judgments we make, even in a modern world full of talk about equality and empathy. And here is the cruelest detail. Often, we are not judged by who we are, but by what our body involuntarily communicates. A nervous tic can be seen as deceit, a vacant look as disinterest, a long pause as ignorance, bold clothing as arrogance. None of this is necessarily true, but other people's minds have already decided. The key is awareness. When we understand how appearance and body language shape perceptions, we can use them more intentionally. Not to manipulate, but to clearly convey who we really are, avoiding misunderstandings and mistaken projections. In the next section, we will dive into something even more complex: why we judge others so quickly, and what these judgments actually say about ourselves. Why do we judge others so quickly? And what does that reveal about us? You walk into a room. In less than 2 seconds, you've already decided who seems arrogant, friendly, dangerous, or interesting. But why? Why do we judge so fast, even knowing we might be wrong? The answer lies in our primitive brain. Quick judgment was a matter of survival. In the caveman days, there was no room for hesitation. When you met a stranger, you had to decide in fractions of a second whether they were a threat, an ally, or a risk. Those who didn't judge fast enough didn't survive. Today, we no longer live among predators and hostile tribes, but the impulse to judge remains active in our nervous system. Quick judgment acts like an emotional reflex that gives us a false sense of control. But there's more. Judging others also helps us confirm our internal beliefs. We judge to reinforce who we think we are. When we look at someone and think, he's lazy, she's full of herself, they're ignorant, we're actually reflecting parts of ourselves, sometimes parts we deny or repress. Carl Jung called this the shadow, the set of personality traits we don't want to see in ourselves, so we project them onto others. In other words, what you judge in others might be exactly what you don't accept in yourself. That's why judgment is a revealing window, not just into others, but into who we really are inside. A practical example: someone who judges another person for being showy may actually be unconsciously frustrated by their own inability to express vanity or confidence. Someone who judges a coworker for being too quiet might actually fear the silence within themselves. When we judge others intensely, we're facing an emotional mirror. On top of that, judgment is a way to maintain emotional distance. By putting someone in a box, we protect ourselves. Judging someone as lazy, stupid, or shallow keeps us from connecting with that person's human complexity and with our own vulnerability. It's easier to judge than to understand. Understanding requires empathy, and empathy takes effort. It's not that we should abolish all judgment. That's impossible. But we can slow down automatic judgment and turn it into conscious observation. We can learn to ask ourselves, what makes me judge this person so quickly? What does this judgment say about me? Is there another possible way to see this? That small space between stimulus and response is where psychological freedom lives. As Viktor Frankl, the Austrian psychiatrist and Holocaust survivor, said, between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. In the next section, we'll flip the lens. How the fear of being judged shapes our personality, our behavior, and even the dreams we never live. The fear of being judged, how it sabotages our authenticity and freedom. Have you ever held back from doing something because you were afraid of what others might think? Maybe you swallowed an opinion, changed your outfit, hid an emotion, or even let a dream quietly die, all to avoid someone's critical gaze. So you're not alone. The fear of being judged is one of the most silent yet destructive forces shaping human behavior. From a young age, we learn that being accepted is vital. A child who is rejected, criticized, or ridiculed by their group feels pain, not just emotional but neurological. MRI studies show that social exclusion activates the same brain areas as physical pain. In other words, being judged and rejected hurts like a physical blow. This social trauma, no matter how small it seems, shapes our behavior to avoid pain in the future. We start seeking approval and avoiding exposure. In doing so, we create a mask. We become experts at performing more acceptable versions of ourselves. We laugh when we don't find something funny. We agree to avoid conflict. We hide our vulnerabilities. We silence our truth. It's the invisible prison of others' judgment. The fear of being judged also stifles our creativity and courage. How many projects have you never started because you thought they'd think I'm ridiculous? How many ideas stayed stuck in notebooks? How many opinions went unspoken? How many versions of yourself never saw the light? We live inside a kind of emotional cage where other people's eyes are the bars. And the cruelest part? Often, those judgments aren't even really happening. Most people are too busy dealing with their own insecurities to judge you all the time. The harshest judgment often comes from within. It's your inner voice, shaped by years of criticism, fear, and comparison, condemning you before the world even has a chance to weigh in. As the French philosopher Jean-Paul Sartre said, "Hell is other people, but the key to the prison is inside us." Breaking free from this fear doesn't mean becoming blind to social context or adopting forced rebellion. It means choosing authenticity as a non-negotiable value. It means asking yourself every day, who would I be if I wasn't trying to please or avoid criticism? What would I do if I wasn't afraid of being judged? When you free yourself from the fear of judgment, something powerful is born. The freedom to be whole. And only in that freedom can true human connection arise, one not made of masks, but of presence. In the next and final section, we'll explore the path back to authenticity. How to judge less, be less a prisoner of others' eyes, and cultivate a life of greater truth and presence. The way back: less judgment, more authenticity. Judging is human. Being judged is human too. But living trapped between these two poles, judging and fearing judgment, is to give up your very soul. The good news? There is a way back. A quiet but deep return to something you may have lost along the way, your authenticity. And this path begins with a simple yet radical act: observing. Observe when judgment arises, both the judgment you cast on others and the judgment you fear receiving. Observe the impulse to point fingers, to label, to reject. Observe the discomfort of being yourself in front of those who might not understand. This awareness, even if subtle, breaks the automatic cycle. Judging less doesn't mean being complacent. It means making room to see others as complex beings, just like you. Being less a prisoner of others' opinions doesn't mean becoming insensitive. It means realizing that the only real validation that matters comes from within. And cultivating authenticity isn't a one-time act. It's a daily practice. Speaking your truth even if your voice shakes. Following your intuition even if it feels strange. Choosing presence even if it hurts. Authenticity is a risk, but it's also power. It scares the insecure, unsettles the controllers, and challenges the complacent. But it also attracts the genuine, inspires the brave, and frees those who have been asleep. As Brené Brown, the researcher who dedicated her life to studying vulnerability, courage, and authenticity, said, "Authenticity is the daily practice of letting go of who we think we're supposed to be and embracing who we really are. In this process, something magical happens. You begin to attract people who have also set themselves free. Deeper connections arise. More honest relationships form. You move away from social theater and closer to something more real, rawer, more bare, more alive. But this requires a choice. And that choice starts now. Today, I offer you a challenge. It doesn't have to be grand. It doesn't need an audience. Just a real gesture between you and your own awareness. 1. Notice a moment in your day when you stay silent to please others or change yourself to fit in. 2. Recognize how the fear of judgment shapes your actions, opinions, and silences. 3. Then, do the opposite. Speak a truth you usually hide. Wear or show something that represents you, no matter what others think. Own a no you've been swallowing for far too long. No need to announce it, just feel it. Authenticity sometimes starts in silence, but it transforms everything around you. And if this text touched you in some way, then yes, share it with someone else who's also trapped by the fear of others' eyes. Maybe that person needs the same permission you do, the permission to be free. In the end, the true antidote to judgment isn't hiding. It's revealing yourself with courage, with presence, with truth. Are you ready for that?